welcome to SSI's Security Speaking Podcast. I'm Rodney Bosch, Senior Editor of Security Sales and Integration. I was recently joined by simPRO Software's Ben Hedenberg for a conversation on improving business operations with a special focus on recurring revenue. We touch on what tools dealers and integrators can leverage to help track RMR-based jobs, RMR best practices like creating an accurate calendar of upcoming jobs and tasks, tips on starting an RMR selling model, and more. As always, be sure to subscribe to SSI's YouTube channel and hit that like button on our videos. You can also subscribe to SSI's podcast on Apple and Spotify and leave a review. Ben, we're going to delve into our topic, improving business operations, with a special focus on recurring revenue. But before we get started, give us a quick introduction to simPRO.
Sure. So really quick, simPRO has been around for 21 years, started in Australia by an electrician, him and a guy in his garage. He just wanted to figure out a way to really run his business better. And so it started with the classic story of one or two guys in a garage, and then has grown. It started off just being able to keep track of his then as projects, and keeps on growing. And in that time, we've invested millions of dollars into it. So what started out as two guys in a garage has grown into 8,000 plus contractors using our software, over almost over 250,000 users who are in it every single day. And we're a global company. So started in Australia, grew into New Zealand, into the UK, Ireland, United States, and Canada. And we just continue to grow, but very much focused on our roots, which is helping contractors run their business more efficiently.
Excellent. So Ben, RMR, it might be the lifeblood for a good many security dealers, but a lot of others, it's not something they've yet fully embraced. Why is it important? What's your message to dealers about RMR?
Yeah, RMR, so recurring monthly revenue. It's a huge focus. Every buzz, every commentary, every article you read now talks about RMR, because you have to have some consistency in the way you're running your business, right? One, you need to keep track of your labor. You need to make sure you're keeping them busy at all points in time. And you have to have a consistent cash flow. In the past, there would be times where you'd have a big job, you'd get paid for it, or maybe didn't get paid for it. And then you'd have some downtime, and in between, you need to know where your bills are being paid, how are you keeping track of your employees, how are you keeping your employees busy to make sure that you have the ability to handle those bigger jobs. So having a consistent business that's coming in, keeping your customers happy, it really just drives future growth. It gives you the ability to operationalize what you're doing, know that there's going to be some money coming in, and know that people are actually going to pay for it, and it gives you the ability to figure out what's next. How do you continue to grow your business?
So, I talk to a lot of dealers, and it's kind of surprising, but I hear from a lot that they're still working with paper processes. They're working with Excel spreadsheets. There's got to be a better way to streamline those processes.
Yeah, I think it's our biggest blessing and biggest curse in this business that you have really, really smart people. And so they've figured out a way to get to this point to where they are now. There's that old saying that what got you here isn't going to get you there. And so they figure out all these backdoor methods, and they're able to grow to a certain size. And we see, they'll have 3-4 people in the office, maybe even grow 10 people in the office and 20 people in the field. But they get to a certain point, and those systems just don't become efficient. They're relying so much on the leadership, and they don't have time to really work on the business because they're always in the business. It's always on their shoulders. It's always keeping track of what's going on. And I got to tell you, so often things just get lost. So when you're working with paper systems, you're relying on your team to bring that information back. You're relying on, what's funny is we're in one of the more tech savvy businesses out there in terms of what we're installing and how we're managing it. But I've seen people that are stuck in the same ways they've been doing businesses for 10, 15, 20 years, the way that they've done business when they started out, or possibly even their parents started out. And the change is always just making a shift to be able to streamline their business, to make sure that things aren't lost, make sure that customer expectations are met. What we're seeing now is customer expectations are really been driven by Amazon and Target and even Domino's, that they expect so much. So that starts in that business to consumer role, but that's expanding into business to business as well. So expectations are really, really high. And without that, you don't have ability to really look at your whole business on what's going on, what's being successful, what are the details. You don't really, frankly, know what's making you successful or what's slowly killing you a little bit at a time. Then I think the other thing that's really changed here recently is people's expectations on communication. You need to make sure that you have an ability, whether it be residential or commercial, to communicate with them effectively and to do that via email, do it via text message, and meet your customers where they are. And so without processes in place, one, you don't know how successful you are or how successful you're not. You don't know how your labor's doing. And then you're slowly losing your customers because you're not giving them the level of support they really frankly expect at this point in time.
So when we talk about this theme of, a complete look into a business, can you give us some bullet points on what that entails?
Sure. So like you talked about earlier, people have paper documentation. They might have binders. You used to walk into a lot of contractors' offices and they've got binders full of their playbook, how they go to business. And then they have all these disparate systems. They have Excel spreadsheets. They've got one program doing this, another program doing that, an estimating software. Problem with that is it's just all over the place. It's impossible to keep organized. You update one thing and then you have to swivel chair to something else and swivel chair to something else and swivel chair to something else. And it's not creating a straight streamlined flow of what you need to have happen. So you need to really have that information in one source of truth, right? You need to make sure that if you update in one place, it updates in the next place and updates in the next place, that everything works process, because I fully believe that repeatable processes deliver repeatable results. And without it being just in one place, it's just too easy for us to get distracted as human beings. And we're also used to the TikTok world of life where it's 30-second bites at a time, that getting somebody to really focus and streamline it all the way through using multiple different systems, it's really easy to get distracted from it. I'd also say like creating really an accurate calendar of upcoming jobs and tasks. And if you could have a relationship with a customer for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, but if you miss something that's hypercritical to them, you don't have a chance to make it up, right? We'd like to believe that there's a loyalty to the relationships that you've built with these customers, and I think there can be, but they also have a lot of options. In the past, they'd have to call around to 10 different places. Now they can just Google and find somebody that looks bigger and brighter. Like, you don't have that option. And then even with the scheduling of techs too, like, you need to get the most out of the technicians that you have, just because nobody has enough technicians. There's just nobody in the world who has too many people. So you need to make sure that you're getting the most out of those by scheduling them in a proper manner. Make sure you align that with the job. Recurring jobs are taken care of. And then I'm trying to think of the nicest way to say it, but keep honest people honest, right? So they say they're doing something, you need to have a little double check to make sure that you know where they are, what's being accomplished, and that they know exactly the work that needs to be done. Because sometimes, actually most of the time, if you start getting into a business, the biggest issue that's there is communication. Communication from the owner to the technician to the customer, just not knowing exactly what needs to be done and how it needs to be done. There just needs to be a methodology, a simple method from everybody from the top to the bottom, to know what has to be done, and then documenting it. I mean, you look at all the documentation that's needed in the security space and with integrators, you need to make sure every I's dotted, every T's crossed, to make sure that the thing's working properly. Again, customers are having us install hyper complicated, complex, up-to-date technology, and they have to know that we can do it in an appropriate manner, and that they can't be, things aren't dropped off. And we need to make sure you have a system that does that.
So when we talk about tools that help track RMR-based jobs, where do automated notifications come in?
Sure. So I don't want this only to be a discussion about simPRO, though we are very proud of what we do. Our whole focus is we want to continue to make contractors' lives better, right? So if it's with us or with somebody else, I will obviously talk about simPRO because that's where I come from. But when you set up your business, you can set up workflows to do what you need it to do. So you think about it as a trigger and a signal and an action to take after that. So if it's scheduled, if it's at time of dispatch, if it's, hey, your credit card's getting ready to expire, any of those things can be automated within the system to just make it an easy place for communication, and then be able to keep track of the communication that's happened between you and the customer. Again, if you're relying on people's memories, and if you're relying on, good faith and hard work, everybody's distracted now. Everybody, whether it be working from home or just dealing with the global pandemic and everything else that we've dealt with over the last couple of years, you need to make sure that you're just enabling all your people to do the best work that they can. Because I truly believe that most people want to do the best that they can. They just have to have the proper systems to do it.
Sure. Well, let's talk best practices, in the context of RMR.
Sure. So when we think about people that have made the journey, and we've got, Frank Bauer from ProGuard, we've got 100+ customers who are using us just in the United States. What we do every single time whenever we help them implement the system, and again, not to talk about simPRO too much, we do have a process that we help them implement. So the first step, obviously, is switching to a proper cloud-based software. So something that you can have access to no matter where you are, and that's both from the office side and then from the employee side. So converting your information into that place and doing it appropriately, having some guide rails to help you walk you to it, and having people that support you, right? So that's number one. So you're not having to, again, swivel chair between one system and another and another and another, and each step having a chance for something to drop. Second one, and I think this is an important one, is building a loyal customer base. Obviously, a lot of you who are on here already have a customer base, but without proper communication to them, without delivering really good service, without sometimes even asking for the business, they don't become loyal. That loyalty that we think of for our parents and our grandparents, that somebody is just going to stick with somebody forever, it's not quite as sticky as it has been in the past, unless you're delivering excellent service. So creating that loyal customer base by really working with them closely, delivering the best service, is step number 2. Number 3, and this might again sound simplified, but creating an RMR package that your techs can sell. If you're relying on them to figure it out for themselves, they're not going to do it so much. In general, most techs don't love selling, and it's not about the money. It's just they feel like they're asking more from somebody. So you have to make it an easy system. You have to set up triggers. If something happens, be able to offer this, make it very simple, make sure that it's a fair price up front. Technicians in general, they have a tendency to spend with their wallets. I work with 20+ years with technicians, and they're always thinking about how they go about things. So they have to make sure that the price they're offering is a fair price, and that it's set up for them and it makes it easy as possible. So make sure that you have really solid RMR packages set up for your technician to sell, so that it becomes a no-brainer to be able to offer them on every single call, whether that be just a simple service call or something more complex, and that it just becomes a part of the process. Have a checklist at the end of it. There's a Japanese theory called poka-yoke, where the whole thing is focused on make sure it happens automatically without you having to think about it. Because when people have to think about things, again, you talk about people being distracted and all the other things going on in life. Sometimes they just want to move on to the next level. So give them the opportunity to be successful. The next step after that is you have this RMR process set up and you have it going. Customers are happy, you're happy. But if you're not careful, you can run yourself right out of business if you don't have the price properly. There's some really great people who set up systems. They thought it was going to work out perfect. But let's say you're in LA. I know, Rodney, that's where you're based. And you start running into traffic times. Every step isn't efficient. And so you end up with a ton of traffic, and one customer, you have to go through a whole process to be able to do any work at their location. And your technician spends an hour every time they try to do something simple. So without proper measuring of this is what I estimated the work was going to be, it can really drive you crazy, or it can really drive your business down where you're not becoming as efficient. So you have to have one place where everything's being recorded, know who's actually paying, know what the profitability is. And that's by having a system that can actually do the reporting on the backside. And I think we'll talk about that at a later point. And then the last piece that I would say is making sure that you have your sales team, once you've built this out, that they go out there and start doing some cold calling. It's still a face-to-face business in many different ways. There are some people who are using phones, or some people who are doing email marketing, which I think could be really successful with existing and future customers. But, send out your team and have them go to apartment buildings, retail spaces, places around the corner that maybe a lot of companies are in, like industrial areas where they need to go around and hit up their local territories. Or whenever they're doing an installation, hit 2 or 3 different locations right around it and just do a drop by, have a package ready to talk about, and really push that conversation about the value of what you guys do, what separates you, and then make sure that they even know. A lot of consumers aren't aware of everything that's going on in the security space specifically, because it changes weekly, seemingly. So make sure that they're aware and offer the packages that you have available.
Okay. From a nuts and bolts standpoint of, your technicians are out in the field, moving away from, a paper-based system, how is this cloud solution helping technicians in the field and making, getting them scheduled? And just like to talk a little bit, some of just the nuts and bolts.
Sure. So one, you have the ability of that recurring monthly revenue where they're going out there, have that scheduled, make sure those things don't get missed. Then you have the office, be able to see where the technicians are, where the work is, make sure you're prioritizing the top people. So be able to dispatch and say, this is where I need you to go. They will then get a notification on their phone, whether it be an Apple or Android or an iPad or a Surface tablet. You have the ability, it will notify them of a job that needs to be done, click a button to tell them where to send them, tell them the exact work that needs to be done, be able to look through the work history. So somebody's not having to start from ground zero every single time. You have the notes to make sure that the customer, so you know what the customer needs or wants. If you need to go around to the back instead of going to the front, whatever, you have the history of it all right there in your hand to make that technician at ease, know what they need to do, make sure that they get there as efficiently as possible. And when they get there, they know the history of what's happened to be able to know what they need to do next. So often in the history, contractors are just showing up blind. They have no idea what they're doing or what's going on. They just know, hey, I need to be here at this point in time. But we give you the tools to make it the office operationally drive the people to the right places and make sure the technicians in the field know exactly what they need to do.
Yeah. So you talked about, sending the sales teams out into the field, apartment buildings, you mentioned retail spaces and stuff, but you're also talking about technicians having, the tools to sell as well.
Sure. Yeah. And a lot of that is about making sure they know where customers are, make sure that they have the ability to quickly and easily quote things without having to call back and forth in between somebody. Because we've all bought cars in the past. It's more difficult now. But don't you hate that process when you go and you say, I know exactly what I want, and they have to call their manager and it takes 2 or 3 steps, or they say, hey, I'll get back to you in 2 or 3 days. What we give you the ability is to have give the technicians be able to do that right then and there. That speed to lead, that ability to quote accurately with the details that they need right then and there, so nothing gets lost, nothing gets dropped. If you have somebody's attention and somebody's focus, if you've built the rapport, if you've built the trust between you and that customer, you need to make sure that your technicians have the ability to act on it right then and there.